So welcome Amol Shah, who is, I guess Amol, you're best described as the general manager for the Americas for data and AI at Microsoft. What does that mean?
Two things I do. So first, thank you to the Brand Innovators team, and thank you everyone for joining today. So I have accountability for essentially our go-to-market strategy across the Americas business. So Latin America, US, and Canada. And so that's really building the strategy, amplifying it through our field sales teams and our customers.
Fantastic. Yeah. So how much of what I said is nonsense?
It was all on point. I was thinking, it's funny. You hear this a lot working, and you kind of you get in your own bubble of where you work, obviously, and but to hear that perspective, you were spot on.
I didn't pay him all to do this in any way. There's no
definitely thought provoking on many levels. And by the way, what's the funniest part was how often I see that iRobot movie being played these days. I feel like it's on every day somehow. So you're spot on that one too.
Oh, thanks. There's a funny clip in that movie where Detective Spooner is played by Will Smith, and the robot's name is Sonny, and somehow Will Smith, you find out, has like a robotic arm and hates all robots because of what some robot did to him. I won't spoil the movie for you. Like, it's not that complicated, but anyway. So they're having a face-off, Detective Spooner and this robot Sonny, and the Will Smith character says to the robot, "Can a robot paint a beautiful picture? Can it turn a canvas into a beautiful picture? Can it, take a piece of paper and make an amazing symphony?" And the robot takes a pregnant pause and looks him straight in the eye and goes, "Can you?" And to me, that is the story of this fight, right? All of us are not Mozart. All of us are not Picasso. Those people were rarefied human beings, and they're not in any danger from AI either. I think they'd use it to amplify. But let's talk a little bit about this idea of productivity brought to you by all these little enhancements across Office. It seems to me like it's the beginning of a completely different way to think about what it is to work and communicate. And I don't think we're giving it enough, because it's starting slow. I don't think we're giving it enough attention.
The way I would think about this is, and I've been at Microsoft for close to 18 years now, and I've been across different functions: finance, marketing, sales, all sorts of different functions within the company. And the way I step back and think about productivity is like, what part of my job do I hate the most? Seriously.
Yeah, no.
I think about like when I was a brand marketer, stuff that I would have to do on the brief stuff you talked about, stuff you would have to do in PowerPoint, being in meetings constantly and having the summarization of a meeting and taking notes and that sort of thing. In finance, working through a spreadsheet and working through Excel, and sometimes taking days to get simple output and not having enough time to focus on the actual insights. That changes now. And so what's really cool about how I think about productivity, whether, again, now I'm in meetings and you have, summarization within meetings, or asking Excel to provide an output, it gets me closer to the insight quicker. Saves me time, allows me to, focus on what I need to focus on, allows my team to focus on what they need to focus on, and and more importantly, it gets us closer to what the customers want. And I think that's the most important part. So when you talked a lot about just automation as a whole, the value of time is our biggest asset, and that's what this helps with. And so the one piece of advice number one, if you're not using Copilot, I know you've mentioned it, or something along those lines, you just have to try it out. I know for a lot it's uncomfortable, but it's one of those things that once you start using it, I can absolutely guarantee you it'll be a lifesaver on so many different levels.
So from your perspective, someone sits down at a now newly empowered seat of Microsoft Office. Teams sort of does its own thing, right? Teams does its own summaries. Like, you press a button, you get a summary, and they're really good. But Outlook, Word, PowerPoint, and Excel, everybody uses those differently, right? The Power Excel users we don't need to talk to right now. They've been injecting Python into Excel cells for a long time. But people who rely on PowerPoint to get their presentations done, rely on Word to write reports and stuff, rely on Outlook for all the communications. It is daunting. What, from your experience, is the best way for people to what's training wheels on this for just that non-daunting training wheel approach to those tools?
So I would say this is an organizational thing. And in full transparency, we're doing a really good job at Microsoft, but there's still a lot of work to do. And I think this is consistent across every single organization I talk to. But the tone has to be set from the top down. So I know there's a few Microsoft folks in the room, but number one is we train and train and train, and whether it's the same thing, we constantly train people on the tools and how to use them. Secondly, our executive team are always using it. They're always like in our face around how we got to use the tools all the time. The tools are built so that it's very easy. So it doesn't take a PhD to go into Word and just understand how to use Copilot, whether it's in PowerPoint or Word or Excel. It's pretty there. It pops up. I think to your point earlier, how you prompt things, that's going to be the biggest training, right? And that's going to require some trial and error, and you're going to eventually get to a point where you understand how to prompt and what you're asking for. So, simple answer is like, the company needs a top level, at least right now, needs a top level focus on it. You need the right training, you need the right dashboards, but ultimately, again, it goes back to like how simple, like just you need to try some things. Again, whether it's personal or whether it's within the company, just you got to get in there and start trying it.
So let's dispel a myth. There is, at least in my understanding of the current state of the art, absolutely no way for anyone to press a button and have their job done for them. It's just not there yet. But there are certain executional functions that you can press a button and it will execute on a task. What is Microsoft's approach to helping people sort that out, or what's your advice to helping people sort out how to approach that level of workflow innovation?
So the way I would think about this, and we get the luxury of meeting with hundreds of customers, and the same goes for you, is I would bucket use cases with AI into 4 areas. And enriching employee experience is one, and we talked about productivity. Reinventing customer experience is the other one, and then reshaping business processes. And then there's just stuff we don't know, which is like innovation as a whole, and we're going to see those. So we talked about productivity. Customer experience is the one area where we're constantly seeing improvements, is what I would say. It's the main use cases.
Does that find itself in like chatbots
customer
on
service,
websites,
on
customer
websites,
service
yeah.
stuff?
And the idea there is it's the numbers speak for themselves in terms of what customers are saving from an ad spend. You talked about click-through rates and how they might not really exist, but like the reality is we're seeing significant up to 60, 70, 80% increases on click-through rates by just leveraging the AI.
And what's the process for leveraging AI in that context where you would see that kind of improvement? Like, what are they doing specifically?
Well, it depends on some of the, like, and I'll give you an example. Does everyone know Coursera as an example?
Coursera?
Yeah, the online learning.
Online learning.
They're leveraging AI into everything. They have something called an AI tutor, which basically takes what they know about you, suggests courses, gives you recommendations, helps with the grading, helps with all of that. But because it's more personalized, it knows exactly what to tailor the customization for. And so they're leveraging the LLM to go back to the end user. But what that means is it's very customized. It's very tailored recommendations. And so you're not getting the spam that you normally typically get, right? And so there's one example of just like you can just see how efficient they're getting by just understanding, leveraging the LLM on the user and getting very, very connected that way. And again, we'll see a lot of examples through the next 3 days of how people are doing that. But just leveraging the data that you already know is the simplest way to see that efficiency.
It's a room full of marketers who are just basically trying to drive velocity and grow their businesses. I think if you ask any marketer what their main goal is, when you cut to the chase, after all the industry jargon is gone, it's increased sales. Discuss.
I would say three things from a marketing perspective, as always. Four things, maybe. And two of them are kind of related, but it comes down to acquisition and retention. Customer engagement is a piece of it. Here's what I would say. I'm going to go a bit off here, but I'm gonna also, I want your perspective on this as well, which is typically when we have technology like this, it sits in an IT function.
Yeah.
And this is, again, I would love to hear from different folks throughout the next couple of days. It sits in an IT function, and we never get to the line of business piece of it. And so brand marketers never had, I often ask a lot of brand marketers and CMOs, how often do you talk to your, chief data officer or your CIO or your CTO? And that the reality is they always say never. And this is the first, and it's true because they don't know, they're not in that world, and it's different. The biggest change I've seen across AI in this context is there's this intersection of different line of business roles with IT. And that's very, very, very complex because you get into situations now in terms of who owns what and how does the budget get spread. And before it was an IT function, and now it's not. And so brand marketers, CMOs, et cetera, need to play a bigger role in how that's being defined. And so, one consideration is for folks in this room is I don't like, that's one area where it's been very confusing, complex, and it's actually slowed down a lot of the acceleration that that we're seeing, and it's a big blocker. And so that's one of the considerations I would say you need to think about as an organization, how you're connecting line of business with IT, and that's the biggest change. We had a good conversation about that earlier.
Well, yeah, but we were talking about that everybody should basically study Game of Thrones to understand how they should be in leadership meetings.
Everyone wants to own AI, right? And that's the reality of it. And there's no clear definition across whether you're a small business or a large corporation and how that actually gets lit up, right? And then you get into the, well, what does responsible AI look like? So from a marketing perspective, we want the data. We want to be able to use it in different ways. We want to be able to save costs. We want to be able to acquire customers. We want to be able to use it to retain customers, all of that stuff. But are we doing it in a safe way? Are we doing it in an ethical way? And that provides another bit of complexity. And so, I mean, I would love your perspective on how you think about that and what your customers are saying.
Amol, at the end of the day, you're going to live through this by leading through it. This may be the most challenging leadership time that I've ever seen in my time in business, because people are capable of doing things in 30 minutes that used to take 3 hours, and they aren't likely to want to go on to the next task at minute 31 unless they're properly compensated and remunerated for it. Everybody knows you need to have AI on your resume if you're looking for a job, and you need to be in charge of AI in your enterprise if you want to keep your job. And so, the Game of Thrones metaphor is right. Everybody's stabbing each other in the front, not the back. And so I think, look, leadership first. And as we could do this conference as a management versus leadership conference and probably accomplish everything we're going to accomplish technologically, because at the end of the day, I don't see this as a technology problem. In our careers, 20 years back, since really AI has become, statistical machine learning was started to emerge 20 some odd years ago as a real business function, tech has been coming exponentially every day. Every day something new's coming. It's not that, the pace is accelerated because it's exponential, but the need for leadership has never been greater, because now you must create a culture of continuous adaptation as opposed to change management, which was the old words for it. We're not change managing anything. We could talk about this all day, Amol, and I wish we could, but we're going to have to move on to Mary Kate Kellen, who's from Paramount, is going to share some insights. Ladies and gentlemen, Amol Shah. Let's give him a big round of applause.